Hey, this is Russell Moore, and this is Reading in Exile. And several of you have asked me in the comments to talk about C.S. Lewis books. We're going to talk about C.S. Lewis, of course, a lot, but some people specifically said they haven't read Lewis, or maybe they have, but they're wanting to figure out where to start, how to get into it. Let me show you something. I feel kind of like Mr. Rogers here with this, but this is a wardrobe. You can see with Lucy going into Narnia in the wardrobe. I happened upon this and ordered it off of Etsy because it said it was a nightlight. I'm thinking nightlight. I'm thinking something like this, but it's this massive thing. But I'm really, really glad to have it. And of course, here is probably my favorite picture of Lewis. I just love that image of him. So if you're wanting to read Lewis and sort of find your way in, first of all, just point out Beatrix Potter's Squirrel Nutkin. Lewis did not write this, but if you'll notice in Surprised by Joy, he talks about that sense of longing that was evoked in him, about the sense of autumn that came about through this book. And I completely share that longing as it relates to autumn and to Beatrix Potter, so I recommend that to you. But if you're wanting to start with Lewis, there'd be several sort of categories that I would point you to. I mean, obviously, there's Mere Christianity. This copy that I have here really means a lot to me because, as some of you know, I went through a deep depression, spiritual crisis when I was about 15 years old, having seen a lot of really ugly stuff in sort of racist, Bible Belt, cultural Christianity. And I just happened to recognize in the bookstore in my hometown, Biloxi, Mississippi, the name C.S. Lewis from having read the Narnia Chronicles many times as a kid. And so I took it home, and in reading Mere Christianity, this is one of the things the Lord used to save my faith and probably to save my life. Not so much because of the arguments, although those are important, but just because there was a voice and a vibe to what it is that Lewis was saying, that I could tell he wasn't stringing cliches together. He wasn't trying to sell me anything. He didn't have some secret political agenda. He really was bearing witness. And so Mere Christianity, I would recommend to any of you. In terms of the fiction, start, of course, with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. As you're reading through the Chronicles of Narnia, don't start with The Magician's Nephew. That comes later. And if you want to know why, I've got a YouTube video. Just go to my YouTube site and I'll explain to you why that would be the case. But we're reading through this as a family again tonight while we're during these nights while we're in quarantine. I'm surprised by how, I have probably read the Chronicles of Narnia who knows how many times over my life from when I was a really, really small child. There's always something new in that. So start with Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The Space Trilogy, Out of the Silent Planet, that's more of an acquired taste. So some of you, I know some people who love the Space Trilogy, some people who hate it. I like it. I think there's a lot of Lewis's theology that's embedded in here about creation, about spiritual warfare, about the nature of humanity. But just try it out. Start with Out of the Silent Planet and see whether or not you like it. See if it's something for you. If you're looking for sort of collections of essays, the best in my view is this one, The Weight of Glory. There's an essay in there about what glory is. And I think Lewis explains glory simply and more accurately than probably anybody I've ever heard, where he talks about glory as being a combination of light, sort of luminosity, and approval or applause. So if you think about that in terms of the transfiguration, Jesus is enveloped in light, and God speaks, "This is my beloved son, listen to him." And so both of those aspects there. He's got a really good section in here on membership and about the tendency to see oneself as part of a herd and part of a caucus. Really, really important right now, where we live in a time of sort of social media mobs and political tribes and what have you. So the weight of glory, that would be one that I would recommend. Surprised by Joy. This is my favorite, I think, of all of them. He sort of talks about his life and about how he came to faith. But it would be worth it if only for this last page, where he talks about following the signposts that God has put in nature, that God has put in that sense of longing, that sense of joy toward God. And it's really well worth reading. Problem of Pain is sort of his explanation for why it is that we suffer, why bad things happen. Really, really insightful things here. Maybe especially right now, we're going through this time of uncertainty, and people are trying to figure out why is this stuff happening to me. That's good. Screwtape Letters. This is a book that is meant to be advice from an older devil to a younger devil about how to lead people into temptation and toward destruction. I laugh every time I think about it, because Alan Jacobs, in his excellent book, The Year of Our Lord, 1943, talks about somebody writing into the publisher and saying, "I've read that book, and the advice that he gives is wrong-headed, if not outright diabolical," missing the point of the book, of course, but people do that. If you want to read letters that Lewis read, there's a 3-volume HarperCollins set, sort of all of the letters, but you probably want to start with this smaller version. That's just sort of collected letters of Lewis. And so there's a lot of things where he's answering questions to children or to others. It's worth reading. In terms of biographies, I mentioned Alan Jacobs. This is probably my favorite sort of biography and summation of Lewis himself, the Narnian. But there are a couple others that I would recommend. This one, The Magician's Nephew, is by an atheist, sort of maybe it's not fair to say anti-Christian, but someone who's very hostile, I think, to Christianity and to religion in general, but who loved Narnia, and who, you'll notice several people who have this reaction, who sort of, once they see what Lewis is getting at with Aslan and with the Christian themes in Narnia, feel a little cheated. But she's sort of making her peace with Narnia. I think it's really important for a Christian to read something like this and sort of see how somebody who disagrees with us works through things. And then this, The Fellowship, which is about the Inklings, not just Lewis, but Tolkien and Charles Williams and Owen Barfield, and how they related to one another. A lot of great stuff in there, including Lewis talking about why he wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, about trying to steal past those watchful dragons, that we tend to protect our consciences from direct revelation. So he's kind of coming in indirectly. So, Emily Dickinson, Eugene Peterson, tell the truth, but tell it slant. That's what he's intending to do. So those are just some of the places that you can start with C.S. Lewis. Let me know about, for those of you who are fellow Lewis fans, what you really appreciate in Lewis's work. And maybe if there's something you'd like for me to talk about in depth here, probably will do Chronicles of Narnia for sure. Maybe do Surprised by Joy in depth, but But what would you like to see us talk about? Not just with Lewis, but with anything. And we'll be back next time here on Reading in Exile.